How's that? All right, it looks like Mike and Ox are now working. Can you folks hear me? If you can hear me, please say so. Somebody give me a shout out. Let me know if you can hear me. Just let me know if you can hear. Please, somebody. Okay. All right. That is wonderful. Welcome, guys. I apologize for that. I literally sat down and fired everything up, and my stupid USB hub died. So I had to scramble and plug everything back into ports on the PC. It was nuts. It was unpleasant. Bo says, you know what doesn't have audio problems? Pen and paper. That's right, buddy. So welcome. I hope you all had a freedom-filled weekend. For those so entitled. Of course, in the words of the great... I can remember the actor's name now, but not the character's name. Anyway, I'm just going to make the quote anyway. History began on July 4th, 1776. Everything prior to that was a mistake. So, there we go. So, today is the first of what will be many episodes where I am going to hopefully instruct you guys a little bit, pass on some wisdom in how to play first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Now, it occurred to me that I talk a lot about D&D. I do. And my love of first edition D&D. And I try to pass that on wherever I go. When I run games at Gods and Monsters or convention events, I always run first edition D&D. First edition AD&D, I should say. And I never really have anyone come to me and say, you know, Bill, that sucked. I hated that. I never want to do this again. And you're a bad person for promulgating the idea of playing first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Quite the contrary. People praise the system once they get an actual chance to play it for its eyes out of the cockpit, heads up, hands on stick and throttle approach, where you're not constantly looking at a character sheet. Do I have the dance skill? Do I know how to climb a tree? How many levels of catch rabbit for dinner does my character currently have? And in that respect, it is a very lightweight game. So, to that, I say, you know, embrace that beauty, enjoy the game at that level. But you might not know how. You know, I've said, hey, go buy a copy of first edition AD&D or Osric. You know, get a player's handbook, get a dungeon master's guide, get a monster manual. Hello, Chris, I see you there. And learn some AD&D. Well, that's a task that's easier said than done. Gary was nothing of very verbose, and I'm not going to be so bold as to say that I could go in and edit the Dungeon Master's Guide down to a lean 110 pages. I wouldn't even attempt it. I wouldn't know where to start. In fact, I think you're going to find that as we do this ultimate deep dive, this, like, we're in the Bath Escape Trieste of deep dives of classic Dungeons and Dragons, you're going to find that all of those odds and ends in there. All of those seeming quirks and like, that's a strange rule that's just tucked off in there, are all essential. But if you're using them right, you're never going to have to consult the rule book, and you're never going to feel those gears meshing together. It's a well-oiled machine, and I think that's something you're going to appreciate. But before we dive too deep into the Dungeon Master's Guide, let's talk about Advanced Dungeons and Dragons from the player's end of things, and that's where we're going to start. I'm gonna open up. I'm gonna share with you guys on screen the PDF. Let's see, window capture. See if we can get away with doing this again. And I don't know, is it? Pardon me while I make myself small here. Nope, that did not work. So I'm gonna add window capture. Try that. And let's see. There we go. Right over my fat head there. So if you're on mobile, this might be a little hard for you to see, and I apologize for that. I'm going to expand that out, and I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. What do you think? Right there? Yeah, I think right there is good. All right. So we're going to get into the fundamentals of character creation for first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first. So what you need right now, if you don't have this and you really want to learn how to play AD&D, go out and grab the PDF from DriveThruRPG or RPG Now or even DM's Guild. I'm, not super crazy about giving Wizards of the Coast money, but, do what you have to get your hands on a legitimate copy of the Player's Handbook. And if you want to grab a copy of the Dungeon Master's Guide and even the Monster Manual while you're at it right now, feel free, but we're not going to get into those books just yet. It'll be a while before we get over to the Dungeon Master's Guide. So, let's take a look here. Let's take a very, very, very considered look at character creation. Now, the fundaments of AD&D character creation are not that different than anything you may understand if you've only played 3rd edition, or God help you, 4th edition, 3.5, Pathfinder, 5th edition, basic, original, what have you. It is a set of 6 stats: strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, charisma. And yes, that's the order that it goes in. And you create a stat from 3 to 18 and just put them in the order you prefer. Now, there are many types of character creation system, and we'll look at some of the other kinds when we get into the Dungeon Master's Guide. But right now, I just want to focus on the basics. So we're going to take method, I believe it's method 3 from the Dungeon Master's Guide, and we're going to roll 4 6-sided dice, remove the lowest from those, and record 6 individual statistics. Now, my hope is that we'll have a pretty robust fighter here when we're done, because I want to start with a fighter for reasons that I'm going to explain later. Now, you might notice that I didn't start with what is a role-playing game, how do I play, we're getting into how do I play. But I'm operating on the assumption that you probably know what a role-playing game is. It is literally what it says on the tin. You are stepping into a role. It's let's pretend with some dice rolls involved, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to fire up Notepad here. This is kind of the result of everything sort of going sideways, that I'm doing this on the fly. Now, if you want to follow along with a character, with creating a character, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have four-sided dice, there are lots of resources on the web that will let you generate a character. My buddy Jeremy Rule, who's over on the Facebook chat right now, hello Jeremy, wrote a little bot for our, or a module for our dice rolling bot on our Discord game. You can just do CHAR and press enter, and it will generate and discard the low dice for you and give you the stats, and then you can arrange them to taste. But me, I'm going to use 4d6. Now, a word about dice. Dice are funny things, and computers are even funnier. And, you know, I used to question Gary's wisdom of launching into discussions of bell curves and that sort of thing early on in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I kind of understand that now. There's two things you need to know about random number generation. First of all, a little plastic or ivory or metal or whatever it is. These vary in density. They can be heavier on one side or one corner or whatever than on the other. People who say, oh, I have my favorite dice, it seems to always roll 20s. I would say 99% of that is a human tendency to project coincidence in events where it's not really necessarily happening. But the other matter is that dice do come pre-fouled. A little weighted just enough so that they kind of blow the curve a little. So if you have a favorite die or a favorite set of dice or what have you, and you're not just blatantly cheating with weighted dice. I mean, there was a company that sold a set of 4 weighted 6-sided dice called Character Builders. And the 6 it was weighted so that the 6 on a couple would come up, and then one of them was weighted so that the 5 would come up, and the other one was unweighted. So if you're using 4d6, you're almost always going to get these obscenely powerful characters, and you should be thrown out of a game that you bring those to. But the other matter, you say, okay, well, I'll just use a computer die system, is there is an entire field of mathematics and computer science that explores whether or not a computer can truly generate a random number. Does a computer bias one way or the other in random numbers? And you might just say, well, statistically, I'll just roll 1,000 times. I'll set up a program to do, for I equals 1 to 1,000, generate random number, next I, print X, where X equals your random generator, and then do some averaging math on the total and everything like that, and that'll let me know. And then I should see a bell curve. Sometimes you might, sometimes you might not. Computers also have pseudo-random number generation, where they literally have a table of fixed point values that they'll pull from that will seem random. That is a big thing in the game Doom, by the way. There are times when an unarmored 100% health player can take a rocket from, say, a Revenant. Revenant's the only creature that fires rockets. You can take it to the face. You might take 21 points of damage, and you just keep going. There are other times when you get hit with one rocket and you're almost completely dead. Those two values are not randomly generated. It doesn't say, okay, I have a range here. It's literally picking from a grid. The point is not to get sidetracked in about Doom's pseudo-random number generator. Computers are not necessarily more random or evenly random, evenly distributed, or with a curve than a die roll. And again, there's a whole science dedicated to researching this. So we're going to stick to what I think are some fairly unbiased plastic dice. And I think that should work just fine. Bo says, Apophenia, seeing patterns in random unrelated events. Yes, that is the term I was grasping for. So we're going to generate these stats, and I'm going to note them down. So let's see. A 6, a 6, and a 1. So 13. Now, 4d6 drop lowest arranged to taste drives my co-host Kyle to apoplexy. So, if you're watching this, Kyle, this one's for you, bud. That's a little better. So we've got... Actually, that's exactly the same. We've got 6, 4, and 3. That's another 13. And you know what? I'm not saying where I'm going to put these yet. I'm going to have to see what I've got. You know, I could have a breakout run here and go 18, 17, 16, 15, and then have enough to, you know, create a paladin. But again, we want a fighter. We're going to create a fighter if we can. All right. There's 9, and 5 is 14. We're doing a little better. And that's an 11, not so good. So these last two need to be humdingers. Oh, there we go. There's an 18. I think we have our desired fighter. And there's a 12. Now, one thing that Gary admonishes us in the Player's Handbook. Let me see if I can find this here. Okay, so if you look on page 9 of the Player's Handbook, and I'm going to highlight this on screen, Gary explains this. And I'll read the paragraph to those of you who may not have a Player's Handbook, or, you know, you don't want to go get yours and follow along. Each and every character has 6 principal characteristics. The character's abilities. These abilities are strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, and charisma. See also Appendix 1, psionic ability. The range of these abilities is between 3 and 18. The premise of the game is that each character is above average, at least in some respects, and has superior potential. Furthermore, it is usually essential to the character's survival to be exceptional with a rating of 15 or above in no fewer than 2 ability characteristics. Each ability score is determined by random number generation. The referee has several methods of how this random number generation should be accomplished, suggested to him or her in the Dungeon Master's Guide. The Dungeon Master will inform you as to which method you may use to determine your character's abilities. The principal abilities are detailed as followed. Now, obviously, we just went with the 4d6 drop lowest method. And by the way, I do have a lot of stuff open on the screen, so if I miss your question or comment, I'm not ignoring you. I'll try and devote a little bit of time at the end to Q&A. Let's see. My current character has only 114. The rest are 12, 11, and 10. Well, keep rolling the dice. So, we have our fighter. So we're going to put that strength. We're going to put that 18 there. Now, intelligence. In a jocular sense, some people may think for a fighter, an intelligence is a dump stat. Not so. Language is understood can be an important key, particularly for a fighter who's going to want to parlay. And we're going to get into the importance of parlay as we move on, as we talk about successful adventures. So let's take a look at our 18 strength. As a fighter, with an 18 strength, I have the possibility of having an exceptional strength. Now you might say, why didn't Gary just go with 19, 20, 21, and so on? Well, first of all, you can't generate 19, 20, 21, etc., etc., etc. with 3d6 or even 4d6. I mean, if you rolled an 18 and then said, okay, roll another 6 to see what you get. Oh, I rolled another, or roll a d6 to see what you get. Okay, I've got an 18. I rolled a 4. That's 22. All right, that's still in this range. But if I roll a 6, well, that's above it, But percentile strength represents a truly extraordinary strength. So let's look at the strength table and let's go down. So if you follow along over on page 9, a strength of 3 and 4, there are no notations. This is strength table 1 on page 9. Under strength 5, here or lower, the character can only be a magic user. So you think of a rather frail wizard if he has a 5, 4, 3 strength. Strength 6, minimum strength for a gnome, half-orc, or halfling. So those demi-humans, if you wish to play one, and by the way, we are leaning towards a human. I'll try and get in all the races, but initially, we're going to start with a human character for simplicity's sake. Let's see. But if you wanted to play a demi-human, and you had only rolled a 5, or you had to put the 5 somewhere, you couldn't play a gnome, half-orc, or halfling. No notations for a strength 7. Strength 8 is minimum strength for a dwarf. With Dodi dwarfs must at least have a strength of 8. Now, a strength of 9 is absolutely average. Your common are working in the field, your somewhat active merchant, they're going to be in the 7, 8, or 9 range. But a 9 is the minimum strength for a fighter character. And then we skip ahead to 12. Minimum strength for an assassin or a paladin. So to be a holy warrior or an absolutely base murderer for hire, you must have a strength of 12. 13, minimum strength for a ranger character. If you want to go out there and you want to Aragorn, then you must be of a minimum strength of 13. You have to be a little bit more fit than the average person, even the paladin. 14, maximum possible strength for a female halfling character. Now, halflings are just that. They're 2-3 feet tall. 3.5 or 4 feet tall. Not a lot of body mass, not a lot of place to put muscle. Pardon me. 15, maximum strength possible for a female gnome character, minimum strength for a monk character. Hey, you're a monk. 16, maximum strength possible for a female elf character. Again, you're lithe of limb, delicate of build. 17, maximum strength possible for a female dwarf or female half-elf or male halfling. 18, maximum strength possible for all non-fighter characters. So even if you want to have a brawny thewed human mage, and you've got an 18 to put in intelligence and 18s to put elsewhere, and you're just like, I'm just gonna be a bodybuilding magic user, that's gonna be your maximum. Now, I want to be careful with the next stat, and I'm going to put a big disclaimer on this. 18, 01 to 50, and this is percentile strength, and we're going to roll this for our fighter. Maximum strength possible for a female human or male gnome character. I'm going to pump the brakes right here. Gary wrote that rule and almost immediately regretted it because he got a lot of pushback from women who said, hey, you need to look at this, and he said, you know what? You're absolutely right. And he said to me, I never used that rule. That rule is not in play at my table. I wish I hadn't done it. I wish it wasn't in the book. And personally speaking, I wish they'd taken it out of the book. That is me. I'm saying, Bill Sylvie is saying, I wish they'd taken it out of the book if that was the case. But he got schooled on that. So he did come around, as they say. 1851 to 75. Maximum possible strength for a male elf or female half-orc character. Now, I'm willing to bend a little bit more there. Again, they're demi-humans. They're smaller of build than humans. 1876 to 90. Maximum strength possible for a male half-elf character. 1891 to 99. Maximum possible strength for a male dwarf or male half-orc character. And 1800 or 100 on percentile dice. Maximum human strength. So what do all those numbers mean? As you've given us the numbers, if you scroll down to the next table under ability adjustments, there are bonuses and maluses to each character stat. And this gives us for strength. And it's kind of a broad table, so let's go ahead and jump in on that. A strength of 3. You're at -3 to hit. You do -1 damage. You can carry... Now, you might note, if you're reading along, you see weight allowance, -350. Wow, I can carry -350 pounds. That weight allowance is listed in gold pieces. So that's... You can carry 35 pounds less than the average person. You might... A strength 3, you might not be able to do much more than carry a scroll or a torch without becoming exhausted. You know, perhaps your 10-foot pole or a very light pack. Open doors on a... So when you come to a door in a dungeon, it's assumed that it's swollen with age, the hinges are rusted, it's ill cut to fit in its frame, but for whatever reason, a closed door has to be opened with a die roll in AD&D. Here, we use a 6-sided die. It's a very simple method. A character with strength 3 can only open doors if he or she rolls a 1 on a d6, and I just rolled a 3. I couldn't have done it. Now, you might ask, well, does that mean you only ever get one shot? You can keep attempting, but it's going to create a lot of noise, and almost certainly something's going to come looking for you for banging on the door and yanking on it and straining on it. So you can try as many times as you want. The observant dungeon master will roll immediately for a random encounter if you're in a hostile dungeon. And the abilities to bend bars or lift gates, that is to raise a portcullis with your bare hands, is 0. You have no chance. So with a strength of 4 or 5, your hit probability is -2. Your damage adjustment is -1. You can carry -250 gold pieces weight, 250 gold pieces weight less than anyone else can. And your open doors is 1, and your bend bars, lift gates chance is also 0. A 6 or a 7, which is getting towards average, low average, your hit probability is -1. Your damage adjustment is neither good nor bad. Your weight allowance is still -150 coins. You still open doors on a 1 only, and you still have no chance to bend bars or lift gates. Now when we get into the pure average, 8, 9, your hit probability is normal. You have no damage adjustment. Your weight allowance is normal. Congratulations, you can carry a 45-pound pack. Now you have a 2 in 6 chance. On a 1 or a 2 on a d6, you can force a door open. And you have a 1 chance in 100 to bend bars or lifting gates by some amazing ability you barely understood you have. You can hulk out and lift a gate or bend bars. Let's see. Oh, Bo's sharing his stats with us over on YouTube. 14, 14, 12, 5, 15, 14. You might have a magic user there, Bo. You might have a magic user, but a 15 does indicate you might have... You've got a passable fighter there. Let's continue. So... a strength of 10, your hit probability and damage adjustment and weight allowance, that's 10 or 11, are all standard. Also, your open doors is also 1 or 2. Now your bend bars lift gates is a 2% chance. 12 or 13, hit probability and damage adjustment are normal, but now you can carry an extra 10 pounds of gear or 100 coins. Your open doors is also 1 or 2. Your bend bars lift gates is a whopping 4%. And I want to jump over to the DM side for just a moment. Many times a dungeon master may be admonished to allow multiple characters to attempt to lift a gate simultaneously. Under those circumstances, if applicable, he or she may decide to add up all the percentage chances for lifting that gate. Just a little peek towards future DMing. But that's not a written rule. That's just something that can happen in modules. Let's see. And we'll discuss module rules versus book rules also. So 14 or 15. Hit probability and damage are normal, but you can carry an extra 200 coins. You still have a 1 or 2 to open a door, but your bend bars lift gates almost doubles. It's now 7. A strength of 16 is where bonuses for fighters start to come in. Because now you add +1 damage. You can carry an extra 350 coins or 35 pounds of weight. You open doors on a 1 through 3. You've got a 50-50 chance of forcing a door, and your bend bars lift gates becomes 10%. You've got a 1 in 10 chance of bending, say, cell door. You know, the orcs beat you up and throw you in a cell to eat you later. You could bend those. Or to lift that portcullis to let the characters escape or infiltrate. 17, we get our first addition to hit. 17 gives us a +1 to hit, a +1 to damage, plus 500 coins or 50 pounds of weight carry. Our open doors remains the same, a 1 to 3, and our bend bars lift gates becomes a 13. 18. 18, you've got a +1 to hit also, +2 damage. You're really putting the oomph behind that weapon. A weight allowance of 750 coins, 75 pounds, in addition to the 45 you can nominally carry. Open doors on a 1 to 3, a 16% chance of bend bars lift gates. Now for the percentile strength, this is where things really start to go off the rails in a good way. An 18, 1 through 50, you're at +1 to hit, +3 to damage, and you can carry an additional 100 pounds. Now, you can carry the halfling if he falls. You open doors on a 1 to 3, and your bend bars lift gates is 1 in 5, 20% chance. 18, 51 to 75. Now you're hitting at +2. And you're doing an additional 3 points of damage also. You can carry an additional 1,250 coins. That's 125 pounds. You open doors on a 1 through 4. You are more likely than not going to just push your way in. And your bend bars lift gates is 25%. That's 1 in 4. A 76 through 90 is +2 to hit, but it's +4 to damage. You are a mighty warrior. You can carry an additional 150 pounds or 1,500 coins. You open doors on a 1 through 4. And your bend bars lift gates is now 30%. Almost 1 in 3 chance of heaving a portcullis up or tearing those bars out. 1891 to 99. Still only +2 to hit, but now you're +5 to damage. Even casual damage, you're going to kill a kobold or a goblin. Just pep. Or the average orc. +200, that's 2,000 coins. You can start help clearing out the dragon's lair now of all its treasure. Open doors on a 1 through 4. But you also have a chance of tearing open a magically closed door on a 1 on a d6, even if a portal has been wizard locked or a hold portal has been cast on it. You can simply tear it out of its frame, possibly. Your bend bars lift gates is now 35. You've got a greater than 1 in 3 chance of lifting that portcullis or spreading those bars. And finally, the legendary 1800 strength. You're at +3 to hits. You're at +6 damage. 3,000 coins. You can carry the small dragon's hoard off by yourself, or 300 pounds. You open doors on a 1 through 5, and on a roll of 1 or 2, you open a magic portal. And your bend bars lift gates is 40%. So that is truly an impressive range of abilities once you get above 18, and a truly crippling range of abilities if you only roll a 3. But hey, it's still something you can have fun with if you want to play a halfling thief or something like that. I'm not sure I'm following you, Bo, but we'll get back to kind of a Q&A here. And that's just strength, guys. We've been running for a while, and we've just covered strength. All right, so let's go ahead and roll our strength percentage. 65. Okay, so looking at the table, let me just tab over there. So we have a strength of 18 by 65. So that gives us a +2 to hit. Very nice, very nice. +3 to damage. Plus 1,250 coins. Open doors on a 1 through 3. And bend bars lift gates. 25% chance. So a good strength for our character. So let's look at the next stat, intelligence. With these average stats, there's not going to be a lot of differentiation. So I'm going to make the intelligence 12, and let's move on to intelligence. Now, this is Gary's description of intelligence, and the reason I'm going to pause here instead of just jumping into the numbers, and if you want to follow along, we're over on page 10 of the Player's Handbook, Intelligence is quite similar to what is currently known as intelligence quotient, but it also includes a mnemonic ability, reasoning, and learning ability outside those measured by the written word. Intelligence dictates the number of languages in which the character is able to converse. And there's a footnote to that. Non-human characters are typically able to speak more language than our human characters, but intelligence likewise affects the upper limit of their abilities as well, and there are racial limitations. See character races. Moreover, intelligence is the forte of magic users, for they must be perspicacious in order to correctly understand magic and memorize spells. Therefore, intelligence is the major characteristic of magic users, and those with intelligence of 16 or more gain a bonus of 10% earned experience. Spells above 4th level cannot be learned by magic users with minimal intelligence, and intelligence similarly dictates how many spells may be known and what spell levels may be known, or what level spells may be known, for only the highest intelligence is able to comprehend the mighty magics contained in 9th level spells. The tables below allow ready assimilation of the effects of intelligence. All right. So we're not going to launch into Intelligence Table 2 until we get to Magic User Character. We decided to put the 12 into Intelligence for our fighter, so that gives us 3 additional languages. And we'll get to languages in a bit. So I'm going to make a note here on my character sheet. Wisdom. Now this is kind of, if you're new to role-playing games, the difference between intelligence and wisdom might seem a bit like, well, why have 2 stats? Intelligence is your ability to absorb and retain knowledge. Wisdom is your ability to use and apply that knowledge. It is critical for the cleric class. So let's read Gary's description of wisdom. Wisdom is and we are now on page 11. Wisdom is a composite term for the character's enlightenment, judgment, willpower, and to a certain extent, intuitiveness. Sorry. It has a certain effect on saving throws against some magical attack modes. It is of utmost importance to clerics, and it says their major characteristic, and those with wisdom of 16 or greater add 10% to earned experience. Furthermore, clerics with exceptional wisdom of 16 or greater also gain bonus spells over and above the number they are normally able to use. The 2 tables which follow detail the information pertaining to the effects of wisdom. Again, we have a fighter. We're only looking at Wisdom Table 1 because the next table adjusts for clerics. Again, this is page 11. Couple little comics there. You know, your int 7 magic user versus your int your int 30 magic, or your int 18 magic user there. And then there's a low dex there from Dave Sutherland, but we'll get over to dex in a minute. So for our fighter, we don't really have anything that can help us with any bonuses. So we're going to take one of our 13s and put it in wisdom. I'm just making a note here that I've already used these stats. I'm notoriously bad about that. So wisdom of 13 for a fighter does not benefit or harm the fighter character, or any character really. Because if we look at 13, it's the minimum wisdom for a paladin or multi-classed half-elven cleric, but there are no bonuses or penalties to magic attacks. A very low wisdom, say he was wisdom 5, he would have a -1 to saving throws versus spells. He wouldn't have the wit, the mental quickness to duck out of the way or to realize that it's only magic. It can't hurt me. It's just a picture. So dexterity. Now, dexterity is important to fighters. Not so much as important for thieves, but let's take a look at what Gary had to say about dex. Dexterity encompasses a number of physical attributes, including hand-eye coordination, agility, reflexes, precision, balance, and speed of movement. A high dexterity indicates superior in all of the above attributes, while a low dexterity might indicate that one of these attributes is actually superior, but that the others are very poor. Dexterity affects all characters with regard to initiative in attack, the projection of missiles from hand or other means, and in defensive measures. So dexterity is not a dump stat. If you've got a magic user and you've diced up, an 18, well, that's going in intelligence, but you come up with a 17, maybe consider dexterity. It is the major characteristic of the thief class of character, and it affects their professional activities such as picking pockets, opening locks, and so forth accordingly. Thieves with a dexterity ability score of 16 or more gain a 10% bonus to earn experience. You might be wondering if a fighter with his 18 by 65 strength gets an XP bonus, and the answer is yes. The two tables which follow outline the effects of dexterity on characters. So, obviously, a dexterity of 3 is very poor. Something I want to note, this is very important. Reaction attacking adjustment. The reaction adjustment indicates issues of surprise, and surprise is going to be a very difficult topic to cover. We might have to do just a whole day just for surprise, but that's not coming until a while down the line. But suffice to say that a higher dex is better in terms of not being surprised, and a lower dex is shown here on the table on page 11, right-hand column. A low dex means you're surprised more often. Your defensive adjustment is +4, which is not a good thing. That's not a good thing. And then we go on. Dexterity 4, you're surprised slightly less often with a -2. Your defensive adjustment gets slightly better with a +3. A dexterity of 5. Here or lower, the character can only be a cleric. Not much of a compliment to the liturgical side of the aisle there, Gary. Let's see. And a dex of 5 gives you a reaction of -1 and a defensive adjustment of +2. And also, the attacking adjustment refers solely to missile and thrown weapons. So a 6, no bonus or penalty, but you still get surprised, or rather, you still suffer a penalty to your armor class. A 7, things get better. No bonuses, no penalties. An 8, the minimum dexterity for a halfling character, which when you think about The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, the books anyway, that kind of fits. And again, no bonuses or penalties. You must have a 9 dexterity for a thief. That's just, they won't let you in the guild if you have an 8. Sorry, that's just the way it is. And no bonuses or penalties. 10 and 11, nothing to say about those. A 12, minimum dexterity for an assassin. No bonuses or penalties. 13, no bonuses or penalties. 14, minimum dexterity for a half-orc. Again, no bonuses or penalties. I guess they half-orcs must be really adroit. 15, minimum dexterity for a monk. Now your defensive adjustment is -1. You become better at dodging blows. 16, minimum for an illusionist. Now you are less surprised. and you have a defensive bonus of -2. Your armor class is getting better. And yes, we're going to talk about why armor classes descend versus raise up. Well, an armor class of -1 would be really bad, wouldn't it? No. I'll explain that when we get to armor. 17, minimum dexterity for a dwarf character. So, +2 to your reaction adjustment, -3 to your defensive adjustment. You are moving and dodging. And finally, an 18 is no minimum for anyone, thank goodness. +3 to your reaction adjustment, and -4 to your defensive adjustment. Our fighter who art in heaven. Hopefully not. Let's take a look at his little scratch character sheet. I'm going to place the 11 in dexterity. There are no bonuses or penalties for doing so. Now, this next stat is supremely important for every character. Please don't think, oh, there is an adjustment table too at the top of page 12. When we create a thief character, we'll go into it, but there are percentage bonuses and penalties for dexterity for various characters. Let's scroll down some. Constitution. Constitution is a term which encompasses the character's physique, fitness, health, and resistance. Since Constitution affects the character's hit dice and chances of surviving such great system shocks as being affected by magic spell or resurrected from the dead, it is of considerable importance to all classes. Now, I'm going to pause there. For our new players coming from other D&Ds, hit dice refers to the die that is rolled, dependent on class or what type of being you are, to determine how many hit points you have. It does not pertain to hitting something. It just pertains to the number of dice that you roll. Constitution directly impacts that. It is very important for all classes, but particularly your frontline classes. There's a couple of comments. Joshua Ford. The Dex 14 general information is incorrect as it contradicts character race table 3. You can tell I'm a regular half-orc paper. Max Dex for dwarves and half-orcs. That Dex cap contradiction is important for... That's right. Thank you for catching that, Joshua. And I should have melded that in, that there was errata issued in Dragon Magazine for some inconsistencies in the player's handbook. And I apologize for not pausing immediately to denote that. I'm going to flip over here. Okay, I'm going to go on. I see you guys. I see your questions over on YouTube. But we're going to finish making... We're going to finish putting stats in. I'm going to run down real quick, and then I'm going to answer questions. So don't think I'm ignoring you. I will get to your questions. Okay, so Constitution has but a single table. An ability of 3... Your hit point adjustment is -2 per die. You could literally roll up a character at first level who could die. Oh, well, let's see. I'm playing a thief. I have a Constitution of 3. Oh, I rolled a 1. He died. Okay, roll up another character. System shock or survival. Now, a system shock does not refer to the excellent game by Looking Glass Studios, but in this context, system shock refers to being hit with certain spells that may very radically change who or what you are. A polymorph spell can kill you, or worse, it can trap you in the form that you're in. You may not be able to transition out of being a wolf or a cow or whatever if you fail your system shock roll. Resurrection survival. if a raised dead, resurrection, or like spell or power is used on a character who's died, there's a chance, a percentage chance, they may not come back. So if we look at a constitution of 3, you only have a 40% chance of coming back across the River Jordan. 4, your hit point adjustment per hit die is -1. And your system shock survival is 40%. Resurrection is 45. An ability score of 5, there or lower, the character can only be an illusionist. And your hit point adjustment is -1. System shock survival is 45. Resurrection survival is 50. So you see, Gary went a little bit easy on characters. 50-50 shot to survive. That's not terrible. 3.6. It's not great, but it's not terrible. A roll of 6. Here, a minimum constitution for a half-elf character. No hit point adjustment. 55% system shock survival. 60% resurrection survival. We're going to talk about raising elves back in just a minute. A 7, no hit point adjustment, 55 and 60. An 8 constitution, minimum constitution for a gnome, 60% chance of system shock survival, 65% chance of resurrection. A 9, minimum constitution for a paladin. See, paladins don't have to be that physically strong. They've got, or that physically robust. They've got God on their side. 65% chance of system shock, 70% chance of resurrection survival. A 10, minimum constitution for a halfling. Consider that, the Doty halfling. 70% chance of system shock survival, 75% chance of resurrection. And 11 is a monk, minimum constitution for a monk. 75% chance of system shock survival, 80% chance of resurrection survival. 12, minimum constitution for a dwarf character. 80% chance of system shock revival, 85% chance of resurrection survival. A 13 is the minimum constitution for an orc, unless Joshua has something to say about it. Just kidding you, Josh. 85% chance of system shock survival, 90% chance of resurrection survival. 13 was half orc. 14 is minimum constitution for a ranger. You got to be tough. You got to be hardy. 88% chance of system shock survival. 92% chance of resurrection. A 15 constitution gives you +1 to hit. Gives you +1 hit point. 91% chance system shock survival. 94% chance resurrection survival. 16 +2 hits per hit die, 95% just system shock survival, 96% resurrection survival. That was 16. 17 is +2 hit points per die, 97% chance of system shock survival, 98% chance of resurrection survival, and an 18 is +2 hit points per die, 99% system shock survival, 100% resurrection survival. Let's talk about constitution. First of all, obviously having a high constitution is good. We don't have anything exceptional, except we want to maximize our chance of surviving resurrection or raised dead. Let's take one of our 13s, or our other 13, I should say, and put it in Constitution. This does not benefit the character we're creating in terms of a hit point bonus, but it does give an 85% system shock resurrection, or system shock survival roll, and a 90% chance of resurrection survival. A moment about Constitution. I think something should be noted. The When a character dies and they're raised back from the dead through some means, resurrection or raised dead, character's constitution, if they are brought back, is reduced by 1, and all commensurate adjustments are reduced by 1. And that's true of any statistic you have. If a monster in a dungeon permanently or even temporarily drains your strength down and it drops below minimum, until you can find a method of getting it back, or it naturally comes back per the rules, and there are a few monsters that do that, your strength bonuses won't apply. And the same is true of constitution. If you're slain in battle and your party collects the gold to have you raised back from the dead, let's say you had a constitution of 15, which gave you an additional hit point per die, now your constitution drops to a 14. Now you don't gain that bonus per hit die anymore. And the chance, if you die again, of being resurrected falls from a 94% chance. And your chance of surviving a system shock falls from 91 to 88. So when you die, you have to look at your constitution and see where you're going to wind up. Now, one thing that is left unclear, and we'll kind of go into this later, is whether or not a character who loses a minimum statistic to remain or to start in a certain class, do they fall out of that class? We're skating towards house ruling, and I don't want to answer that question yet, but we'll come back to it. Finally, and after we go over this stat, we're going to answer questions and do a little Q&A at the end of the class. Charisma. Now, one thing I want to put my foot down on, charisma is not personal looks. You can be as beautiful as the most gorgeous supermodel, male or female, bodybuilder, whatever, and be as offensive and obnoxious and as horrible as anyone in the world. Your charisma will be in the single digits, very low. You know, you fart, you make inappropriate comments, you pick your nose, you know, you're just generally mean and abrasive and nasty, and it doesn't matter how good looking you are, it's not going to help. Conversely, you could have a scar that runs from here to here, be missing the tip of your nose and one ear, but you are well-spoken, you have a commanding presence about yourself, you command loyalty and attention and respect, even with a disfigured face, your charisma could be through the roof. Charisma is not physical attractiveness only. It is strength of personality. Charisma is the measure of a character's combined physical attractiveness. It is a part, but it's not the whole. Persuasiveness and personal magnetism. A generally non-beautiful person can have a very high charisma due to strong measures of the other two aspects of charisma. It is important to all characters as it has an effect on dealings with others, principally non-player characters, mercenary hirelings, prospective retainers, and monsters. Yes, monsters. It affects the loyalty of all hirelings and retainers. It is the key to leadership. The following table expresses the facts regarding charisma scores. And we are on the left-hand column of page 13. We've got two gnomes fighting a giant snake at the bottom. So let's look at this. What do we have left? Well, we have a 14. So that's where charisma is going. And why did I use charisma? A lot of people say, I'll just dump stat charisma. You're wrong. One of the first hard lessons I want to impart to you about teaching you guys to play AD&D, dump statting charisma is a mistake, particularly If after all the dust is settled, you've got a small party, they're wounded, they're down, and they're relying on you to parley with the monsters and beg for your lives. If you've got a charisma 4, because you didn't want to put it anywhere else, now you're going to pay the fiddler. Don't use charisma as a dump stat. Don't dump stat anything. If your lowest score happens to be charisma, so be it. But don't just say, oh, I'm just going to put that lowest score in charisma. That's where that's going to go. You might find that a physically weak character who can negotiate with NPCs and monsters goes a lot further than somebody who spends his life just punching his way through the bad guys until that doesn't work anymore. So a charisma score of 3, the maximum number of henchmen you can have is 1. The loyalty base of henchmen or hireling is minus 30, and the reaction adjustment is minus 25. Now, loyalty base and reaction adjustment, we're going to get to those in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but just recognize that having them low is very poor. An ability score of 4, similarly, it's the only adjustments are minus 20 and minus 25. Charisma of 5. Here or lower, the character can only be an assassin. I think that's what Bo was asking me on the YouTube commentary. But the maximum number of henchmen raises to 2. Their loyalty base is minus 20, and the reaction adjustment is minus 15. Charisma of 6, nothing of note, except the loyalty base is 15 and the reaction adjustment is 10. A charisma of 17, now you're kind of getting into normal, low average. Maximum number of henchmen is 3. Loyalty base is still minus 10. Reaction adjustment is minus 5. A charisma of 8, that is the minimum charisma for an elf. Remember, you're one of the beautiful people. Maximum number of henchmen is still 3. Loyalty base is minus 5%, but reaction adjustments are normal. 9, 10, and 11 are all normal. Normal reaction, normal loyalty, and the maximum number of henchmen is 4. Maximum charisma for a half-orc character is 12. Maximum number of henchmen for a charisma 12 is 5, with normal loyalty and reaction. 13 is normal, with maximum number of henchmen 5, but the reaction adjustment is 5% bonus. 14 charisma, maximum number of henchmen is 6, loyalty base is plus 5, reaction adjustment is plus 10. 15 minimum charisma for a druid character is maximum number of henchmen is 7, loyalty base is 15, reaction adjustment is 15. 16 maximum charisma for a dwarf character with respect to non-dwarves. Maximum number of henchmen is 8. Their loyalty base is plus 20%. And reaction adjustment is plus 25. Charisma 17. Minimum charisma for a paladin. That's right, paladins have a tough row to hoe in the charisma department. Maximum number of henchmen is 10. Loyalty base is 30. Reaction adjustment is 30. And an 18 charisma. Maximum number of henchmen 15. Loyalty base is 40%. Reaction adjustment is 35. So our fellow has charisma 14. He has a maximum number of henchmen, not hirelings, henchmen. Henchmen, remember from our discussion of henchmen and hirelings, are leveled non-player characters. They are basically NPC adventurers. Their loyalty base is plus 5%, and the reaction adjustment of non-player characters on meeting him will be plus 10%. So there we have the basic practical character and the characteristics explained. Now, we're going to go over notes regarding charisma table. That's on the right-hand side of page 13. And again, Gary notes here, maximum number of henchmen states the number of non-player characters who will serve as permanent retainers of the player character. It does not affect the number of mercenary soldiers, men-at-arms, servitors, and similar persons in the pay of the character. Loyalty base simply shows the subtraction or addition to the henchmen's and other servitors' loyalty scores. And finally, reaction adjustment indicates the penalty or bonus due the character because of charisma in meeting and dealing with persons and creatures encountered. For example, the character might encounter a basically neutral, intelligent creature and seek to converse with it in order to gain some advantage. If the charisma of the character is low, he or she will be working under a handicap, which will have to be overcome by generous offers and gifts if a chance of success is hoped for. On the other hand, if a character's charisma score is high, he or she will begin negotiations from a strong starting position due to charm and magnetism. So I hope day one out, this adequately covers our characteristics. And now I'm going to take questions. Don't see anything new over on Facebook. But let's go down. Bo, looking at your stats, I would be inclined to say, unless you're going to go with kind of a scrawny magic user or just disagreeable fighter, a thief or an assassin might be something good for those stats. Katie, we are starting off with a fighter, the simplest advanced Dungeons and Dragons class. Cerulean says, how often do you use skills like bend bars or break doors? All the time. You will find during dungeon adventuring, the ability to open doors is paramount. And the same with lift gates and bend bars, Cerulean. Cerulean says, I particularly dislike wisdom because unlike strength and intelligence, which are a number representing a roughly immutable characteristic, wisdom can be gained or lost by a person. Well, it kind of is what it is. I mean, I tend to find that stupid is as stupid does, if you will, and that generally people who aren't going to take life lessons won't take them later. But, you know, your mileage may vary. Bo says, looks like I'm an assassin with really bad people skills. Well, Bo, what can I say? Let's see. She turned me into a newt. Any race bonuses to stat? Yes, there are, Katie, and in fact, that's going to be the subject of the next lesson, choosing a character race and possibly adjusting our stats accordingly. Now, if you remember from the beginning of the lesson, Gary noted a successful character will have at least 2 15s in stats. I could very easily make this guy say an elf. Let's see. Let's just fly under the radar a bit. Let's skip ahead because Katie wanted to know. So if we look at elves on page 16, we do see many stat bonuses for elves. Do they get an additional bump to charisma? They don't. But we'll look at that a little bit further. We'll look at what picking a certain class can do for those die rolls, and then proceed accordingly. I'm feeling like our fighter here. We're going to stick with human initially, but... Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I didn't... Idly scrolling and just probably driving you guys crazy. So we're definitely going to look at those. So there is a definitely a chance when you choose a certain race of a stat increasing or decreasing or getting certain bonuses to it. Bo asks, can I spend 1 command point to reroll? I'm going to say, since this is an initial lesson, and this is an in-class example, you may take a single 3d6 reroll. A single 3d6, not 4d6 and drop lowest. Bo, you can take a single 3d6. That's just my teacher / DM allowing that, guys. That's not a rule. Again, if you think your character is going to need the 2 15s, that is 2 rolls of 15 or better on your statistics, what I recommend you do is, if you don't get, and this is kind of gaming the system a little bit, but it is a set of rules. Before you assign your stats, if you're suffering in one, like let's say you were really committed to running a fighter but having the 2 15s, you might wait until you assign anything else and then pick a race that could possibly bump the 14 to a 15 in the appropriate place, such as, what have you. Now, Jack Photon brings up an interesting point here. Has been reading ahead a little bit. Hello, Jack. Good to see you. DMG provides wisdom mods for age, minus for youth, and plus for elders. Yes and no. Those bonuses are assumed. They are baked into the character's creation at that time. If, say, I rolled up a character's age and he was in his 60s, a human who's in his 60s, well, that might drop his might drop his strength and his constitution. But the baseline assumption when choosing a character's age, and we will get to this and go into it more depth, is that the die scores that in the creation of the characters, those numbers already factor. Not that you then take them off the table and add them to or subtract them from your character. So as your character ages going forward, if they go from 59 to 60, and you say, oh, well, their constitution drops 1, or their strength drops 1, or what have you. I don't have that table in front of me. We're focusing just on the player's handbook today. Then, as the character ages, then you apply bonuses. Or, if you employ a wish, or something like that, to lower your character's age, then the mods for certain bonuses or penalties will kick in for a younger character. Sorry, my butt hurts a little bit. Tractor seat is very, very, very hard. So there we have the basics, we have the practical character down. And for those of you who are interested, he is Strength 18 by 65, Intelligence 12, Wisdom 13, Dexterity 11, Constitution 13, Charisma 14. Now, with that done, with that said, I'm gonna save this guy. I'm gonna call this new AD&D character and save that because we're gonna come back to that. Just leave that there. I just didn't want to lose it in the event that I got a power outage or something like that. Anyway, are there any questions? Does anyone? I know there were. I've got folks: John Durad, Kevin Reynolds, Joshua Ford, Jeremy over in Facebook chat. So I was fighting my audio issues earlier. Any additional questions, guys? Any at all? And while you're deciding whether or not you want to type those up, I just want to apprise you guys of the schedule. Tomorrow, Monday night AD&D recap, which I may do at the beginning or the end of class. Haven't decided yet. But then also, of course, we're going to continue on and we're going to decide on a race for this guy. And I'll want a little bit of input from you guys on that, okay? Wednesday, Waster Wednesday with Kyle Schuant. I'm not sure what we'll do on Wednesday. If we'll continue on with class and have Kyle as kind of a co-instructor, or if we'll go on and do some conflict or just general BSing or what have you. Don't know if I'll be on Shero's stream. I wasn't last week. That's fine. That's absolutely okay. I completely understand if they, if they're doing another stream. That's completely fine. That's great, Bo. Thursday, we have a guest on Thursday. Our guest speaker class will be the one, the only Jeff Talanian, creator of Astonishing Sorcerers and Swordsmen of Hyperborea. And I know I just mutilated that, Jeff. Please don't hurt me. And Jeff has created a lot of other fantastic stuff. The guy is a mover and a shaker in the new D&D movement, which really I think is a lot better than like new classic Dungeons and Dragons. NC D&D I think is suits me a lot better than OSR. New classic Dungeons and Dragons. It's just Hyperborea now with 3rd edition. Thank you, Kevin. So I don't have to stumble over that mouthful of letters and words. Hyperborea. It's just Hyperborea now per Kevin Reynolds over on Facebook. Joshua, yes, I got that. Okay, so Kevin asks, what method do I usually use in my game? I 46 discard lowest arranged to taste. Which is probably like Kyle's asleep right now. It's not quite wakey time in Australia, and I guarantee he's going, no, oh, I had a nightmare. Someone was using 46 discard lowest. Sorry, Kyle. I apologize for that. Anyway, so yes, Jeffrey Talanian will be here on Thursday. I hope Friday I've got Alan Grohe here. But if not, more AD&D classes. And I hope you guys are digging this. If you guys are not digging this, then let me know. Next week, we will continue on with a lesson. Hoping to have another guest on next week. But also starting next week, one of the things, one of my bully pulpit items a bully point, if you will. Over the year, and I know lockdowns have more or less stopped. But yeah, Katie, you can wind up with a 9 doing 4d6. I mean, the average on a d6 is 3.5. So, anyway, one of the things, the drums I banged on is, even though you're in lockdown, you don't have to give up on your friends. You don't have to, be cut off from people. You can still play Dungeons and Dragons. And I've been saying for a year that you don't need fancy camera equipment and a boom mic and a dedicated streaming PC and studio lights and all that. You can play D&D with your friends online using something as simple as a mobile phone. And then I've said, ask me if you need any help. We're going to have a guest who may wind up being a co-hosting regular. I certainly hope so. At least a couple of times a month. Mr. Rusty Schaefer will be here. He's a friend of the show, a contributor of very cool things to the show. He will be joining us on the live stream. Rusty is the man has got such a brilliant mind when it comes to virtual tabletop systems. And so he's going to start spieling us on how to use VTTs, how they operate, the best ones, and so on. So we're gonna have a master class in virtual tabletops. So even if it has nothing to do with COVID, even if it has nothing to do with that, if you just want to know how to game with friends you haven't gamed with in forever, but they're scattered to the corners of the globe, we're going to learn the nuts and bolts of that starting next week. So, so that's just about it, guys. I hope, starting out with the basics, I know it's a little like, we just rolled up a character today, Bill. I want to know like what Gary Gygax's favorite color was, and how a sphere of annihilation works and all that. We'll get there. I promise you, we will get there. We're gonna, when you jump in the pool, you don't immediately teleport to the bottom, right? You sink down. We are sinking down through Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and we have just breached the surface with character creation. So, roll up your characters, go through, and we will absolutely do more character creation stuff tomorrow, and hopefully we can get a little further. Hopefully I won't have any more friggin' problems. I won't be using that hub anymore, that's for sure. And yeah, things will be super groovy. So thanks everybody for stopping by today and watching. Big shout out to Jeremy Rule. Thank you for stopping by, Jeremy. It was lovely to see you. John, Kevin, Joshua for catching the Player's Handbook errata. Thank you, Joshua. Bo, to whom I gave a command point to re-roll. I may not tell anyone on the Roll Bama Roll forums that I had to give you a mulligan. And I got a question from Passerby before I dip out. Do I think that new TSR is able to get new and young players into the hobby and be a real competitor to WotC? No. And I'm not picking on them. I'm not saying that to be nasty. WotC is part of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. WotC is an impressum owned by Hasbro. If Hasbro looks over and sees a little bit of profit shrinking, they will do what is necessary to keep the Dungeons and Dragons brand healthy and robust from a corporate money standpoint. Now, let's be clear. Hasbro doesn't give a damn about you. They don't give a damn about me. If you called up Hasbro and said, hey, how many hit dice does a red dragon have? You know, and there'd be this long silence, and then, you know, call Wizards of the Coast, don't bother us. But if they saw a dip in mind share, Hasbro would do terrible things to ensure that that mind share stayed buoyed up. TSR, regardless of whether you're talking about TSR 2.0 or TSR 3.0, are not in the same league. You know, I could hawk a kidney and buy computer parts and open up you know, just start putting computers together here in my man cave office area. There's no way I'm going to compete with Dell. Okay. Never. No matter how good my intentions are. So, no, I don't think this new TSR is going to be able to get new and young players into the hobby and be a real competitor to TSR. Getting new young players into the hobby is our job. We have to go out there and we have to go to the mattresses and say, AD&D is awesome and it's the best Dungeons and Dragons ever published. Play AD&D and sit down and direct them to these videos that I'm going to be doing and read the rules and learn the rules. That's what'll get people in. We can't rely on a company to do it for us. Hasbro is interested in selling D&D as a lifestyle to Stranger Things fans. That's just how it is. We're the ones who've got to keep it going. We're the ones to get the young people into playing D&D. So I am going to leave it off there because I am famished. I did yard work this morning and I'm starving, so I'm going to go do that. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Elton. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Bo. Thank you, Passerby. Jack Photon, thank you so much for your comments about wisdom. Yeah, and Passerby, I just met people who think that WotC is going to burn because of new TSR. No. They're no more going to burn because of new TSR than me coming up with house rules for using Space Marine miniatures is going to cause Games Workshop to burn. It's just not happening. All right? That's just how it is. I mean, you could go buy a surplus fighter jet. You're not going to take on the U.S. Air Force. You could buy a dozen surplus fighter jets. You're not going to take on the U.S. Air Force. And that's what we're talking about. So, you're welcome, Passerby. You're welcome, Elton. I love you all, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by. Oh, and now I have another viewer hopped on the live stream. Hello, viewer. Yes, please send me an email, Elton. But I got to go, guys. I got to go. Thank you. When I say I love you, I mean it. I really do. You're all wonderful people. And thanks for stopping by the live stream today. I'll see you all tomorrow, though. I will see you tomorrow, and we'll have a final time. AD&D How To Lesson 2. Peace. Y'all take care.